I have been talking about impact technology for 4 or 5 years now, and this is a presentation that has evolved over the years. And of course, just in recent times with COVID-19, it's evolved quite considerably. And so hopefully you're joining this because you are part of a nonprofit organization or social enterprise or somebody interested in tech for good. I think all of us here probably understand and why we are joining this session is because we know that technology is really driving progress. And this isn't a new thing. It's not just the new devices that are coming out and the new technology that's being innovated every day now, but over the years and decades and generations, technology has really driven progress in a big way and has really changed our landscape and how we interact with one another. And so we've seen this in the headlines, but you know, these continue to get more and more extreme as new technologies are coming out, and we're questioning what to do with these new things in the future of technology. And so a lot of us are coming to sessions like this and saying, just tell me what to do. What do I need to pay attention to? Do I need to pay attention to blockchain? Do I need to pay attention to virtual reality? Do I need to pay attention to AI? Like what is the next thing? As technologists, we just want you to tell us how to respond and what to do with this. But the reality is that technology is no longer, you know, just the device in our hands anymore. It's everything we interact with. It's in our cars. It's sometimes in our refrigerators. It's on our smart TVs. It's everywhere in our homes. And digital and having a digital forefront for your business is no longer just your website and a brochure site and the content. There's user experience and interaction, and it's become paramount to how we present ourselves and how we present our programs. Here is one of the slides that I created 4 years ago, and I kept this in here because I wanted to show the difference in the stats. So the exact same stats 4 years later, and you can see that, you know, the total population is there on the far left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, I've got the number of unique mobile subscribers in the world, and that's 3.8 billion. Today, the stats are 5.16 billion. So that's almost 2 billion that we're jumping just in 4 years. And so the adoption of these devices and technologies is something that we need to be aware of. And that's why analytics is important, and that's why data for good is important, and understanding our user experiences is crucial. So as we design our systems, as we design our programs, we need to know, what are people using? Are they using tablets? Are they using phone devices? Are they using laptops and web technologies? And even if it is a web app, we need to be aware of that mobile experience just because of that jump in users right there. And so the number of people that are connected around the world is just increasingly growing. And so that's why, you know, technology is really driving change, and it's driving how we interact with one another. And just, you know, in recent days and recent weeks, we've had to adapt and change how we're using technology so that we can stay connected with one another, and not just connected with people on the other side of the world, but connected with people on the other side of our city. Connected with our own team members. And so it's a wonderful thing that technology affords us those advantages, but the companies that have lasted and withstood the test of time are the ones that have adapted their approach over the years. And so let's see what that looks like. You know, in the past 20 years, we've seen companies like Blockbuster and Kodak completely disappear. It's not for the lack of being aware of the advances that are happening. Kodak, for example, is one of the first ones to have a digital camera, but their foothold was really in film, and they didn't think that that was going anywhere. And so they allowed that bias towards what their strong, prominent product was to blindside them and to allow them to forget about the innovation that was right in front of them. And Blockbuster, for example, was approached by Reed Hastings in 2000, and he wanted to create a partnership with them. And they just didn't see that digital streaming media was going to be a prominent thing. They didn't see that user behaviors were going to change. And so because of that, by 2010, Blockbuster was bankrupt. So that's just in the last 20 years. But what about the first 20 weeks of 2020 with COVID-19? As some of you may know, we're entering the 21st week of 2020. So what has happened this year has completely transformed the way that we're engaging with one another. And yes, we're witnessing bankruptcies and shuttering of doors for organizations that we honestly thought were staples in our community. And some industries are definitely being affected more than other industries. But for the most part, there have been a lot of industries that have been able to adapt. They're figuring out work from home. They're figuring out how to trust their teams. They're figuring out what systems they can put in place so they can continue to interact with one another, so that they can digitize their programs, digitize their files. A lot of our partners have been very fortunate that they've been working with us on strategies for the last 5 to 10 years about how to digitize their programs. And so they've continued their operations and they've continued working with their beneficiaries, even in the state of things right now, even though they were working from home. And they had to figure some logistics out, of course. We've all had to make adjustments because this is not normal for anybody at this time. But they've been able to continue those operations and serving the people in need because they had already been thinking about their digital landscape for many years now, and they've made strides in investing in that and developing that ecosystem for themselves. And so right now everybody is scrambling and being forced to shift, and we're seeing people utilize Zoom for the first time, but then also try to understand all of the different tools that are out there. Should we be using Teams? Should we be using this project management tool? Should we be using this myriad of tools that are actually available? And quite honestly, if your inbox looks anything like mine, you're getting emails from every single digital organization out there saying, we've got a tool for you to do this. And it's for everything. New accounting systems, new project management systems, new virtual conferencing systems, new collaboration, whiteboarding tools. I mean, we're getting emails from everybody, and it's a little bit overwhelming to know which ones do I choose and how do I respond and react quickly so that my team can get up and running, but be mindful and create strategies that are going to last a long time. We're also getting a lot of information and emails and content within webinars that are saying, so how is your organization going to pivot with the new normal? What are you doing to pivot? What are you thinking about right now? How are you going to adapt to this? And it's never been more important and imminent to adapt than it has been recently. And so what does it look like when a company does adapt to new technologies, and how are they doing that? And let's look at history a little bit. DuPont is a 200-year-old organization, and you might not know, but they started out as a gunpowder company. But at their core, they were scientists. And so, today they're known for things like creating rayon and Kevlar and Teflon, as well as things that we didn't even know that we interact with in our daily lives. They also make industrial electronics. They make car part air conditioners and things like that I didn't know until I did some research that DuPont was involved in all of this. So they're behind the scenes on a lot of our scientific endeavors and things that we use on a daily basis. But, they have used this as a, evolution throughout time to say, we are scientists and we want to continue to create things that make people's lives easier and better. And we want to use science for good. And we want to do things that are going to transform user behaviors and what they're using. Western Union, on the other hand, has been around for over 150 years, and they started as a printing telegraph company. And what they did is actually just respond to the user needs and evolve over time to what users were actually wanting from their tools that they already have. So their pivot was a little bit smaller. They didn't create and invent something completely new. They just made a shift in what they were able to deliver, and now they're the world's largest money transfer network. But let's take a look at some of the nonprofit sector. Charity Water, for example, in 2012, had a video campaign that actually ran for 4 months long, and it was a huge deal that they raised $2 million. But in 2015, they had a gala where they provided everybody with a VR headset and gave their audience a virtual reality experience of walking in a girl's shoes to get water for the day. And this one night, they raised $2.4 million. So for them, it was really about inspiring this audience and really influencing them and changing the way they viewed the experience of what they were donating to. And so the common thread between these three is that they caused user behavior to change. Like I said, DuPont, they were inventors. They invented, and users responded to that and reacted to that and actually bought their products because their products were better than what was already out there. Not every organization approaches this and says, I want to invent things, I want to create something completely new, I want to think outside of the box, or I want to grow my box. Not everyone is doing that. Not everybody is an inventor, and we can't seem to think beyond what's in front of us sometimes. And so for the majority of us, we're responding, and that's what we're doing right now. You know, we're hosting a virtual convening instead of meeting in person because this is what we have to do to get together. And so we're responding to the situation, and we're adapting, and we're using the tools that are actually available to us to do that. And that's a little bit easier for most organizations because you know what your programs are, you know who your users and beneficiaries are, you know what their needs are, and you can respond to that. And you can, like Britt Lake said yesterday in the keynote presentation, this is a time to mindfully listen. Just listen to your users, have some empathy, and respond to them. And then Charity Water, you know, theirs was really all about influence. They were using emerging technology. They were being incredibly creative. And there are a lot of organizations that have adapted in this way, that have said, you know, we want to use what's out there to create something not necessarily brand new. Like, it's not our technology, but the technology exists. So how do we leverage that to create something that creates an experience for people so that we can influence them, like the ALS bucket challenge that went viral. That was a really creative thing. And so they were just using something that already exists in social media. CauseLabs exists because we believe that technology can be used as a force for good. We believe that it can grow positive impact. And in 2015, the IT report from the World Economic Forum said technology can transform the world. Technology has already transformed the world. But I think what was really important in this statement is all of the other context that they had around this in the report. And they said technology can transform the world in a positive way. It can really bring people together. It can really create change. It can create accessibility. It can provide security. It can provide identity. It can do things and equalize our systems. And so we believe that technology does grow impact. It's the way that we are now engaging with people. And what matters is how we use that technology. So how we implement it in our organizations is based on the strategy and the goals that we're actually creating around that. So when you go to your vendor, it's not a matter of, I want you to build this web app or this mobile app or this smart TV app or this, you know, website or whatever widget or tool you're asking them to build. It should be around the problem statement. And honestly, the hardest problem is figuring out how to define the problem. But if you've got a good team and you've got a good consultant or strategist working with you, you can define that problem statement and set appropriate goals so that you can reach the impact that you actually want to have. And then you're building the right tools and you're making the right decisions about how to invest your money and what the outcomes are going to be. And so we knew that, before COVID-19, there were a lot of industries that were already adopting digital. Information systems, for example, most of our books in our libraries are now ebooks and digitized. Communications, of course, has already been digital for a very long time. Entertainment, not just streaming media, but also games and esports. Commerce has been e-commerce for a long time, and that's been, a huge rise since COVID-19. So everything that's on the left-hand side here has only exponentially gotten bigger because of what we're dealing with right now. But after COVID-19 happened, just in the last 20 weeks, we've seen a huge shift in education. Education systems such as universities that were already offering online courses and already had digitized content had an easier time of making that shift. But a lot of public schools are scrambling to figure out, how do we digitize this content? How do we get our teachers, meeting with their students? How do we do this? On the health side, for example, we've had teledoc and digital systems for a long time, but it wasn't necessarily accepted by the masses. And so people weren't utilizing that because they didn't have to change their behavior. But because of this, user behaviors are changing. And so I think maybe everybody on the call is old enough to remember how things used to be, newspapers and magazines and actually physical books and encyclopedias in your home, or, in classroom only education, not having any online systems and static data. And on the right-hand side are the things we're already familiar with hearing, EPUBs and crowdfunding, gamification, e-commerce and digital marketplaces, machine learning, and then some of the new terms, that are coming today, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, what do we do with these things? And so the answer really is have empathy and listen to your users and pay attention to your own user behaviors. What's happening right now in your own habits? What's happening to your family? What's happening to your team? What's happening to your community? If, for example, more people shift to remote work habits, what is going to happen to those who used to listen to podcasts during their commute? And so if one of your delivery mechanisms is a podcast, are you going to see a reduction in engagement because people are no longer having those commutes? As data privacy becomes more prominent and people are more concerned about sharing their data, are you asking information that you actually need on your forms? Are you asking the right information? Is that data actually growing with your users, or is it static data? If they filled it out 10 years ago when they were 20 years old, do you now know that they're 30, or do you still think that your users are 20 years old? And so understanding these behavior shifts, but then also being dynamic with how you use this data is really important to evolving your strategies for how you use the technology that's coming in the future. Because as we know, we can't really predict the future. We didn't predict what has just happened. And I was in a talk the other day and someone quoted Lisa Sherman and said, "This is a moment of irreversible empathy." And I believe that. And I quoted the whole quote here, and we can provide the slides for you later. But what I want to share is that as organizations that are focused on social good, this is the time to really shift people's thinking and behavior. There's never been a more prominent time when they have had more empathy for the gaps in our system and the things that we should be paying attention to, and to philanthropy. And so we can use this time to grow positive impact. We can actually use this time, this pivotal moment, to create something new and create new ecosystems. We can use this to be more empathetic to what our users need and to actually influence that behavior of how they make that shift. So use this to invent, to respond, and to influence people.